Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 313 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen with your host, Matt Payne. This week, I was fortunate enough to be able to have a heart-to-heart chat with one of my favorite photographers, TJ Thorne. TJ is one of those photographers who has chosen to break away from the pack by doing his own thing. He's driven by his desires for creative expression and his search for emotional and mental freedom. TJ has battled the demons of alcoholism and depression, and nature photography is one of his primary weapons in that battle, a topic that we delve into deeply. We also discuss TJ's upcoming book release, Ebb and Flow, which is a monumental triumph and demonstration of how his personal work has guided him on this journey. Before we start with the episode, I want to quickly thank all of our incredible supporters on Patreon. You are all so amazing, and you keep me going, and you help me to continue to put in the long hours to produce this show. If you would like to support the show like those awesome people do, please go to patreon.com/fstop and listen to support the show. Okay, let's get to this week's episode with TJ Thorne. All right, TJ Thorne, it is so awesome to have you back, my friend.
Good to talk to you again. Haven't talked to you in face-to-face in a while.
Yeah, I was going to say face-to-face would have been 2021 in Death Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good time. Good time around the fire.
Oof. Too good of a time is what that
for you.
I
enjoyed myself.
I enjoyed myself far too much.
As you do.
Yes. Well, so TJ, I think you were one of the first guests we had on the podcast way back in 2017.
Yep.
And a lot has changed in photography and in your life and in my life since then. But for people that didn't have the chance yet to listen to that one, maybe go ahead and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about TJ.
My name is TJ Thorne, and I live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest and Oregon area, and I am a professional photographer that takes pictures of what I like to call is the often overlooked calming simplicity that can surround us in nature and basically everyday life. But I teach workshops and I sell ebooks, and I have a book that coming out that we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, it's been photographing for 20 some years, focused on nature specifically since about 2012, maybe a little bit before that. I push a button. That's about the extent of it.
That's funny. Yeah, it's interesting how some people totally downplay what photography is and some people totally upplay it, and I think they're both valid perspectives.
Yeah, no, it's I think just in life in general, I distill things down to kind of understand them and stuff. And I used to work in the restaurant industry, and when you you can get upset and frustrated at all the things that go on. And I just had one of my coworkers looked at me and he's like, don't get upset. He's like, all we're doing is making future poop. I'm like, you're right. So cooking, I'm just making future poop. And with nature photography, I'm just going into nature and pushing a button. That's all I'm doing. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. And it definitely takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously, it goes deeper than that, but yeah, that's a funny way to put it.
Of course. And we'll talk more about all that for sure. One thing I was going to mention to you, because you said you do workshops, I don't know how many people I've ran into that have mentioned that going on a workshop with you and other people, like you and Eric Bennett, has completely transformed the way that they approach photography, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, that's the best compliment about my business that I can receive. Just my style of photography in general, it's not about just going out to take photo, more about using the camera as a tool to interact with the landscape. And I think a lot of the photos that make it in my portfolio are just born of that kind of mentality, just going out and looking, interacting through my camera. So the camera is more of a tool for interacting than it is for taking a photo and attention to the special things that in nature. And I don't know. That's I've heard those things too, and it's really nice to hear. And that's what keeps me going and teaching. because I know what photography has
Yeah,
done for me,
awesome.
and knowing that I can, provide a little bit of that to someone else, that's pretty huge.
To kick us off, maybe tell us a little bit about how you even got into photography to begin with.
Sure. Yeah. I got my first camera back in high school. I had a film camera, but when I first got a real camera where I felt like I was spending a ton of money on a camera, which was like $200 at that time. It was a lot of money on a camera for me. It was to take photos of food while I was in culinary school. I was an apprentice, and that was a class that I had to take. So I had to take photos of food that I was making on my job for class, and I don't know, I had the camera with me, and I was going to punk rock shows and skateboarding and snowboarding with my friends, and I just always kind of liked bringing my camera with me and viewing the world in this little 3x2 box, and it just kind of grew from there. I moved. That was back in 1997, 98, 99. I moved to Oregon in 2001, and it's just I grew up in a rural area with a forest in my backyard. So moving to Oregon, where it's abundant nature and easily accessible, that's just what I was drawn to. I never considered myself like a camper or like a hiker or anything back when I was living in Pennsylvania, where I grew up. It was just that's just where I played. My backyard was a forest. But when I came to Oregon, living in the city, you need that, and you need to go to it. So I started really getting into hiking and things like that. And that was my main interaction with nature. And I just always took my camera with me, and it just became a thing. And slowly over time, I just started getting more and more into it. And in 2011, 2012, I learned that there was a nature photography community and genre. I didn't, about Ansel Adams, but I didn't know about Mark Adamus and that there was this online nature photography community, because I was a hiker. So I was always posting my photography images on hiking forums, and talking with hikers and stuff like that. And once I discovered that there was an actual community, I was like, wow, I'm a nature photographer. That's what I am. So the next time that I went out, it was winter solstice 2012. When I went out with my camera to Cape Kiwanda, I was like, I'm going out as a nature photographer. I had this label, and I'm labels, I have my certain feelings about them nowadays, but back then it was it helped give me an identity and a focus, and feel a little bit more proud about what I was doing, and have a little bit more intent. So once 2012 came around, that was when I really kind of poured myself into. Oh, I'm also big on puns, and since I talk a lot about water, there are going to be a lot of water puns in this whole conversation. Maybe we can count and see how many there are at the end. But yeah, no, I just kind of poured myself into landscape and nature photography, and have been basically doing that ever since.
Do you still see yourself as a nature photographer?
That's what I brand myself as a business, but I've been branching out a little bit more. When I first started getting into photography, it wasn't nature, it was just whatever, right? And I think having that be the focus of my business has kind of taken away a lot of the photographic side for me, because what I do with nature in a camera is just really emotional, and it's more based in experience and emotions and things like that. So I've kind of lost the photographic art side of it, and paying attention to just things that aren't inherently beautiful, and more just kind of interesting. So it's lately I've been going, and I had my film camera refurbished, and I've been carrying that with me everywhere I go, and I've been using that to interact with things that specifically aren't nature, and more just kind of paying attention to patterns and tones and just interesting things and curiosity, because it's easy to take pretty pictures of pretty things, but I've kind of lost the art of seeing beauty and the more mundane and the more ordinary things. So I'm kind of trying to get that back a little bit. But so no, I'm kind of swaying a little bit further away from that. I do have some things that I'm working on in a serious way that aren't nature based, and eventually those will be on my website, because at first I didn't want to put them out there because they don't fit with my brand, but my brand is me, and I'm multifaceted. So Why hold that stuff back? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you had already kind of mentioned this, but I know in a lot of our previous conversations, you've mentioned the challenges of working in the food service industry and how that entire lifestyle impacted you and your mental health. And I was wondering if you could just expand upon that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the restaurant industry, it's for a specific type of people. Kind of like masochistic people that it's a hard life. It's a lot of long hours. It's low pay. It is a labor of love, and I did love it. There are parts of me that kind of like relished in those like 16-hour shifts. At one point I was working 2 full-time jobs, so I'd work from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then 4 p.m. to like midnight or 1 a.m. Go to ride the train back home, get up, ride the train back to work, do it all again the next day. 4 or 5 days in a row. And when you're in your 20s, that's a lot easier. But yeah, it's not, it's for someone like me. I've had issues with alcoholism, and it's kind of like just becomes part of the industry there. And but I think when I really started to be affected by it was when I was going through my alcoholism, and at that point I was a manager for a retail food service company that shall remain nameless. And it was just, I'm an introvert, pretty huge introvert, and running a team of 60 to 70 people and showing up every day and being that person that has to like energize all those people. It was draining, and doing that every day was really rough. So in my time off, that was when I really really focused on my nature photography and getting out to nature and going out and immersing myself in the landscape. But yeah, it's a hard industry. It's hard on your body. It's hard on your mind. It's hard on your emotions. It's hard on your sleep. I miss it sometimes. I miss the camaraderie and, the manual labor. But I don't miss the stress. I can't handle stuff like that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of what I've understood too about the industry, is that there's a fairly strong emphasis of, alcohol is a big part of, especially if you work late nights in restaurants. I know a lot of people drink when they're done, and they're like out until like 3 or 4 in the...
Yeah, I didn't wait until I was done. We have a low boy freezers, and I kept a bottle of whiskey in there. I would, it got to the point, like I said, I've battled alcoholism, and there were times where I had to like take a drink before work, and just kind of. That was how I was dealing with stress, and it wasn't right, and it wasn't good, and I paid the price for that. But I'm well past that now. 12 years sober, and it's no longer an issue. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, along those same lines, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your struggles with depression and addiction. When did it start, and how has photography helped you?
So I think, back in around high school, and kind of like, I was in the punk and skating community, and, it's almost like you're just kind of expected to be that way. You don't really view it as a problem. And I don't think that, I really thought of what I was going through as a problem until like 2006, 7, 8, around them, and things started to kind of really get bad. And in terms of, so we'll talk about depression and alcohol, because they're different. They're not like, they're isolated from each other. But I don't know, like around 2008, 6, 7, 8, around there is when I really started feeling like my depression was an issue, or like anxiety, a lot of that. And I'm sure that played into me picking up the bottle and all that stuff. Alcohol was just kind of like a way to deal with it. But so once I started drinking, things like that was the focus. But even, since I've been sober, I've been struggling mentally and emotionally. I was telling you the other day that, I'm kind of going through a rough time, and I feel like in a lot of ways this might be, right now where I am, this might be the worst that my depression and anxiety have been. And, I've talked to doctors and counselors and been on medications and kind of like spin the wheel and let's see what we're going to try this time. And I did that the other day. So, I'm going to get on some other things to help me and start therapy and stuff like that. So I'm trying to keep an open mind about it, but it's still something I struggle with, daily. And it's been the past year, and especially maybe the past couple months, have kind of come to a head with it. It's just starting to affect my life in a lot of ways that I know something needs to be done. But
Yeah, and I suspect for you and other people like you that rely on photography as a way of coping with some of that, it's particularly insidious because the depression probably prevents you from wanting to be excited to go out to make new pictures, or even so it's like this downward spiral that can happen. I'm assuming.
yeah, it does. And it's and I always knew that was a possibility with being making this my living. There's a there's a pressure that comes with it, and up until like maybe the past year, I've been pretty good at kind of insulating myself from that and just doing what I do. And I still love going out. It is hard for me to get the motivation sometimes. I'm a homebody. I don't travel a lot, so when I do go out, it's places around home, and there becomes I can still find really special and personally significant moments out in nature, but there are times where it's just like, well, I'm going to go there again, and it's just my mind and my emotions kind of getting to me. But I always enjoy myself every time I go out, and I still photograph a lot. I have a lot of photos. I really enjoy that process of it. But I think lately, what has really gotten to me is just the social media and the marketing side of things, and feeling like I haven't put an image on my website since 2001. And that there's like that pressure there where I'm like, oh, I'm a professional photographer and I'm not putting any images out and stuff like that. And
2001 or 2021?
2021 was the last time I put
Oh, okay.
website. Yeah, 2021. An image on my website. And I have a lot of work that I've finished, or that I've kind of partly processed, and a lot of what I'm sharing on social media and my Instagram stories and stuff are literally I'll send them from my phone or my camera to my phone through the Wi-Fi app or whatever, and process it in Snapseed and post it on social media, dust spots and all, banding and everything. I don't. It's really the beginning of the process that I need right now, and the tail end of the process is kind of getting. We all talk about our backlogs, and I'm suffering from that problem too. I have a lot of images that I really want to process and that I really love and that were personally significant moments. I'm just not necessarily ready to put them out yet, I guess. So it's slowly starting to come back. I just need to kind of figure things out in that regard. I want to. I've lost maybe. I want to define my creative identity a little bit more, and that's what I'm having a hard time figuring out. But yeah, it does become tough, and I slip in social search engine optimization ranks because I'm not updating my website, and there's a pressure to stay relevant, right? And when you're not posting images, you're falling off the wayside. So my business isn't being impacted by that, but I have faith that I'm doing the reasons that I'm doing it are necessary and important. I just need to get out of my own way sometimes, which I'm working on.
Yeah, we can sometimes be our own worst enemy.
Yeah, all the time be my own worst enemy. I'm definitely my biggest problem is me.
Well, I know that you're just getting ready to release your very first book, which is called Ebb and Flow.
Yep.
Which is all about your journey of personal expression and connection to the subject of water. Can you tell us about the impetus for this body of work?
Yeah, there was no there were a couple of realizations that I have. There was no flashpoint really. Back in 2017, I had a little realization / photographic epiphany of what truly called to me in nature, and kind of where I wanted to be putting my photographic energy and my creative energy. And when I came back from that trip, I was on a private workshop in the Columbia River Gorge, and I remember, kind of having come to this realization, and I'm sitting on this rock, and the client's doing their thing, and I'm just watching the creek, and I'm watching water lap up over top of a rock. And I remember looking at it, and I'm like, that's really neat. I'm going to point my camera at that. And I pointed my camera at it. And when I did that, I really enjoy this. And I had no clue what I was doing. My images are terrible at it. You learn things about photographing a certain subject. So as much as I have, But I just remember kind of combining that realization that there was something there in that water with the realization that I had in Utah, that I like, more intimate kind of plays of light and scenes and personal moments and things like that. And it kind of just grew from there. And then like the more that I kept doing it, and the more that I kept exploring that side of things, I realized that it kind of was a thing for a while. It just wasn't a conscious thing. So, I remember the first time that I saw, like, I love direct light. I love midday light, and I love midday and direct light on water. And I remember the first time that I saw that on a beach, an Oregon beach. And I remember pointing my camera at it and, being really disappointed with the images. But I remember like, wow, that was really, but I just kept doing it. And it kept becoming kind of like slowly more and more conscious and more of a focus. And I just, at one point, I just realized that everything that I needed from my experience to nature, like we all go to nature for specific reasons, and everything that I needed out of that journey into nature, I got interacting with water. It was like, it was the epitome of what I needed from nature. It was getting lost in a flow state. It was everything being melted away and washed downstream. It was just me. It's a meditative practice. There's a lot of like, mental stuff that goes into photographing water, and there's like, that side of it. But when I'm doing it, nothing else in the world exists. So whenever I feel like I need to go kind of get myself right and spend time in nature, it's usually water that I'm seeking. And, it's become hugely important to my creative identity. And, once I kind of realized that, I let it take me, and I've obsessively photographed water. And just kind of seeing how big of a deal it was coming and realizing what it got to me. Like I knew that I always wanted to do it justice for how, what it gave to me and what I got out of it. So I didn't want to just throw them up on a website. I wanted them to be put in a book, and I wanted it to be something that was significant to me, and important to me. So I've withheld the majority of my water work. There are a couple images on my website, but mostly you can't find it, and it's all going to be in the book. So yeah, there was no like a flashpoint of like, I'm going to do a book. It was just like, this is really important. And that's just kind of what I've always wanted to do, but never had the opportunity until now. So here we are. It's currently being bound. And,
yeah, it's a big deal.
Pretty excited to see it. And, it's easy to call it a book. But, when I think about everything that went into making these, not just making the images, but also everything that went into me needing to make the images, makes it much more important and significant to me. So really looking forward to kind of getting through all of the, the marketing and all of the dry stuff, and like cracking open that tape and holding a finished book in my hands. I know it's going to be pretty emotional for me. So
yes, yeah. I had the same experience. I don't even know if you knew this or not, but I published a book.
I did not.
Last summer it came out, but it's mostly text. It's not. I mean, there's pictures, but it's a guidebook for the San Juan Mountains.
Nice.
And yeah, when you first get it, you're like, oh my god, this is so cool.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful moment. So you should definitely be proud of yourself when that moment hits.
Yeah.
Have someone video you.
Yeah. Well, I gotta. Yeah. We'll make something of it. I think I'm more just like I live in an apartment. And I'm like, I'm gonna have 1,000 books sitting in the middle of my living room for who knows how long. So it's gonna be pretty big. I'm really excited to finally get the book and to see the results of all of this. So
yeah. So you said as you were making images of water, you learned some things along the way. I'm curious if you could maybe share a couple of those things. Like, what are some of the things you've learned as you've gotten better at capturing water?
It's I think a lot of it is more just kind of deriving inspiration from it. The whole title, Ebb and Flow, it's water based, but I kind of think of it as more just like the ebbs and flows of life, and it's this thought that helps me deal with the really tough times. And I know that, we kind of need the tough times to accentuate and give context to the good times. So whenever there are ebbs, I know that they're necessary, and that as long as I kind of take care of myself and hold tight, that the flows will come. And who knows when that's going to happen, or how long each is going to last. But life has its ups and downs, right? So kind of deriving inspiration from that, understanding that more than half of my body, most of our bodies are made up of what carved the Grand Canyon. There's power in that for me. There's power in knowing that no matter what water is doing, it's trying to find peace and equilibrium. And so those are the things that I find I derive inspiration from and find a commonality with. But more just kind of like understanding that I do need nature, that I do need to photograph water in order to kind of combat everything that goes on up here, and to find a place in my heart where I can find gratitude and love and peace and happiness and solace. When I'm photographing water, like I take moments of gratitude where I'm like, I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky that I'm alive, that I've gotten sober, that I can wake up and watch the sunrise and stay up and watch the sunset, and I can run my fingers through my son and my girlfriend's hair, and it makes me find gratitude for these really small things. And gratitude is something that I need in order to kind of stay right with myself. And so knowing that when I'm photographing water, that I can get all of those things, and it kind of it's taught me a lot about that, and a lot of things that just necessarily can't be put into words.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hopefully you'll want to talk a little bit about this, but back in 2018, I finished climbing the highest 100 mountains in Colorado, and it took me forever to do it, and it was a big deal, but I was simultaneously like super happy, but also very depressed, because this huge thing that I'd been working on for so long was over with, and I didn't know what was next. And I know before we started recording, you talked a little bit about how like this body of work, you've been looking at it for so long, and you have to prove all these proofs of your book, and now you have to market it all. And so you're seeing these images over and over and over and over again. And for me, like, you start seeing your own images enough that you start getting tired of them a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious for you, since these images of water are so tied into your sobriety, or at least your journey through sobriety, at least in the more recent past, I'm curious how that's going to affect you in terms of maybe wanting to move on to find something else, and how that's going to impact your mental health.
Yeah. It's there is a pun incoming. There is a saturation point, with images of it doesn't remove the fact that, these images are very personally significant to me. They each, it's 100 images of water abstracts, and each of the moments where like I was in my viewfinder taking these photos are very personal and very needed, and some of the, the best times of my life. I think about some of these outings where, it was emotionally and spiritually needed that I was doing this, and I can look up and see my girlfriend, standing right down the river, and be grateful for that. They're captured during really personally significant times. So they're always going to have that, but at some, there is a point where, they become the book, and, it's easy to kind of like forget the meaning, because you're thinking business, you're thinking marketing, you're thinking like, oh, I got to email Matt and do this podcast, and I got to make this this graphic, and I got to build the website, and so it's easy to start thinking about it in that way. But when I get down to the basis of it, and when I go back out to photograph water, even if I'm photographing fairly clear scenes and like kind of types of water scenes that I've shot before in places that I've shot them before, I still get everything I need. They're still really important, really significant, and I need that. So yeah, there's a point where I don't want to say they lose their sheen, but they become part of what you're trying to sell. So I try to always keep myself remind myself that these are like very important images, and And nothing proves that to me faster than going back out and photographing water. And, you know, I've been photographing water like pretty seriously, like almost obsessively for at least since 2017. And, you know, you kind of know what to expect at this point after you've been photographing it. And, you know, I'm someone that like, I like to think about all the different ways that I can photograph something. Like just combine, like, you know, one of my questions is what if, like, what if I do this, and what if I do this, and what if I do this, and what if I did this and this? And so I'm just like always combining different thoughts and ideas and ways to do things. And, you know, I've been photographing for over 20 years, and, you know, I'm still discovering who I am as a photographer, and that's constantly evolving, because as I'm constantly evolving, my work should evolve with it. If I'm shooting authentically and genuinely, you know, my work should evolve with me as a person. And, you know, even like last month, I discovered a new way to, like, this new idea of interacting with water. So even, you know, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, I don't even know how many images of water that I've taken, I can still find new ways to interact with it through exploration and experimentation, and just be, you know, remaining curious and making sure that I never forget why I do it and what I get from it, and how I need it. So, you know, it's a journey. And this book, you know, while the images, you know, the oldest one I think is from 2015 or 16, you know, while I've been looking at them for a while, they're the beginning. They're documentation of a beginning of a journey, and that's significant in its own way, right? Like, I know that I'll be photographing water. I want to start for the rest of my life. You know, things can change, but knowing what I get out of it, like, this is always going to be a part of me. You know, like, you know, you can't see if you're listening, but I have, you know, ebb and flow tattooed on the back of my hands. Like, this isn't just some, like, you know, this isn't just a collection of images. Like, this is like, you know, I've put it in the book, like, it tells the story of my search for emotional and mental kind of freedom. Like, you know, these aren't just photos of water. They are periods of time where I needed to be photographing water, where I was in distress, or I needed some peace and solace. And I found that by looking through my viewfinder and capturing the photos that I did.
Yeah, you almost beat me to the punch, because I was going to ask you about your search for emotional and mental freedom. And I was curious if you could expand a little bit more upon kind of what you mean by specifically the word freedom. Like, how is that word involved in your journey here?
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of along the lines of everything that I've been saying. It's just like, you know, the mind can be a prison sometimes for somebody that's going, you know, suffering from anxiety and addiction and, you know, depression, mental health issues. You know, it's hard to escape sometimes. So the freedom for me comes when I'm in that viewfinder. Like, you know, nothing exists other than me in that moment in time when I'm in my viewfinder photographing water. Nothing. Like, it's hard to break my attention. Like, when I come away, like, and I need the viewfinder, you know, I don't use the LCD. I need to be lost in that little box, and I'll come away and I'll have like a red mark on the side of my nose just because, like, I'm pushed up against the viewfinder, because there's nothing else there except me in that moment in time. Like, the whole entire world is made for me in that moment in time. So that's the freedom for me. It's the freedom from, you know, all of the problems that, you know, that I let plague myself, or, you know, just responsibilities in general, like paying bills and rent, and, you know, sitting in traffic and going to the grocery store, and just all the things that go into, like, what life has become. You know, like, none of that exists when I'm in my viewfinder. It's just me and gratitude and everything that I need in order to survive the world. And I come away from that, like, as an enriched person. You know, my problems are still going to be there, but I feel better prepared to mentally and emotionally to kind of just face what I need to face. And so I guess that's the freedom part for me, is, you know,
yeah,
do these tell, like, or these aren't, you know, these images aren't like things that I can put into words. They're, so, like, you know, when I say it's the story of my search, it's like, the story is that these are periods of time where I was getting that and finding that and looking for that. And that's what the book is about. It's about the images and about the moments and about the experiences.
It's interesting, as you were talking, I feel like you're describing yourself as both the jailer and the prisoner. Yeah, you're kind of, like I said, you know, I'm my own worst enemy. I am my biggest problem, you know. I posted on Instagram. And the camera is your key.
Yeah, Yeah, it's that's depression and anxiety and mental illness. You kind of, and a lot of people, that's where gratitude comes in. Is a lot of people don't have the opportunity that I have to go like sit at a campsite next to a river in Olympic National Park for 5 days without a cell signal, looking through an expensive camera. So there's gratitude. There's, I need to acknowledge that I'm pretty lucky, that I've overcome some pretty big challenges, and even though I still deal with what I deal with, I need to acknowledge the progress that I have made, or the fight that I have always been fighting. I haven't given up, and going back to teaching, that's what I want to help people find. I want them to help find those personal moments and like that personal satisfaction in their process and in their work, and getting more out of photography. It's saved my life. It's helped me battle the things that I've needed to battle, and that's what I want to pass on through my workshops and creative thinking and teaching and my work in general.
I love it. So shifting back to, you assembled quite a fantastic group of photographers to write passages in your book, including William Neal, Alex Noriega, and Tula Top, which I was glad to see he's still around. How much has it meant to you to have their awesome words accompany your photographs in the book?
Trying to not cry, but the world, it means the world to me that, they kind of assembled themselves. I did ask, but Bill is somebody that I've been talking to a lot, and he's been a great resource, not just about business and photography, but just life and talking in general. And Alex has been one of my best friends since 2012 or 13 we met, and we've kind of just we've been super tight since then. And Tula, he's kind of gotten out of the social media eye a little bit, which is wonderful for him. Like he's living the like not having to rely on social media dream that I think a lot of us kind of wish we could. But he was, Tula is a really good friend, and he's played a pretty significant role in me being able to do this for a living. He when I was going through my shit and freshly sober, and even before being freshly sober, like he was my photography buddy. We were always going out and hiking, and just like he would drive, and I'm struggling to make ends meet, and kind of like going through the process of I don't really enjoy working in the restaurant industry. I want to pour myself into being a photographer. I don't have the money. Like, how can you do that when you're trying to like fill your cupboards and all this stuff? And he was amazing enough to kind of like give me a little bit of a loan, no strings attached loan, to kind of get my business started and get my first permits and set myself up as a business. And it was important to me that I paid him back, and it took me a couple years, and I did. And he's just been, I wouldn't be where I am without any of them. Or Bill has been part of my friendship circle for the past couple of years, but Tula and Alex have been, there for a while. I wouldn't have gotten this book out to where I did without Bill. Just having his support and his words, and he talks me off the ledge a lot of times. Alex just as a friend and a business partner, and Tula being there in my early journey. Who wrote my? He's a really talented writer, and he wrote my letter of recommendation for doing my apprentice or my artist in residency at Crater Lake National Park. Which was a hugely significant time. That was like the beginning of my photography career, and the first time I was able to like kind of escape the work and life responsibilities and just dedicate myself to being a photographer. And so having them three be part of my first book is pretty special and significant, and I'm honored that they were even willing to take part. So I'm eternally grateful for their support and their words and things that they said and wrote.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe you'll get to pay that forward to someone else who, looks up to you as well.
Yeah, maybe. It's weird to think of myself in that way, but, I'm sure someday maybe that'll happen.
Yeah, I mean, no big deal. You're just publishing your own book. It's You gotta pat yourself on the back at least a little bit, man.
Yeah, I do.
I get it though. I'm the same
Yeah.
way.
Like I said, when I pull this book out and I see like everything printed and I can look in the back and see like published by and like maybe
Right.
work with some bookstores to get in bookstores, and I walk in and I see like my book on a shelf, and there's
It's
a long way to
surreal.
go. Yeah, like this book has been a long time in the works, and even just once I get the book, like the work really starts then, because like I said, I did order 1,000 of them, so it's going to be a slow burn, but yeah, it's gonna there's there will be a point in time where it all hits me. But I think a lot of us we kind of forget that. We get especially with social media nowadays, we're just all so living in the moment that we forget to kind of like look back and review our terrible images that we took 5, 6, 7 years ago. But yeah, I think it's important that we kind of look at our past work and see the progress that we made, not just in our skills technically, but the variety of work that we've been producing and how our work has been changing, and going to our websites, going to our own websites, and like looking at it as a viewer instead of as the person that's in charge, and just kind of like just being proud of the things that we've created and the things that we've given to the world. Like I think the world needs as much beauty as it can get. It needs as much people creating things as it can get. It needs as much art as it can get. There are plenty of terrible things in the world, and anything that we can give of ourselves in that regard, I think we need to give a little bit more credit for.
And it's amazing how social media can sabotage that. It's like I had an experience last summer. It was like right about when my book was coming out, and I got into this big argument with someone on Instagram, and he basically had all of his fans attack me, and I was super upset about it. And then my friend Jennifer Renwick reminded me, like, you're going to a book signing tomorrow for your book. Like, why do you care? like,
Yeah.
like, you don't need those people to validate who you are. Like, and it was just a really good reminder. And sometimes we need other people to remind us, like, hey, like, you're deserving of recognition, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, social media, it's pretty easy to get caught up in a lot of that stuff. And I think, we were talking before we started recording about kind of around those things. And, I have limited, emotional bandwidth, and I don't want to spend it on that kind of stuff. I keep my head down, and I try to lead with love, and I try to be a positive and supportive person. And, it's easy to really get caught up in that stuff. And, I know that there are some times that I do, but, I try to catch it and turn myself off. Like, when I watch a lot of YouTube at night as I'm trying to like let my mind relax, and I'll go seeing myself like tap the comments button. I'm like, start scrolling, like, nope, close the comments. You don't want to like, oh, here's a video of a puppy being cute, and somewhere in there somebody's gonna make it political, and then they're gonna like, and it's just like, come on, man. But yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that stuff. I just try to keep my head down and lead with love and leave a positive impact on this world. And I think the more that we can kind of think that way, and just let's get some pretty pictures out there, and spread some love and some positivity.
Love it. So going back to the book, I would love to talk about your process for curating the photographs for the book project. 100 photographs of abstract water is a lot, right? Like, it's a very specific, similar subject, a lot of overlap. But somehow you managed to find a way to make each image stand out. So I'm curious what that process was like.
Yeah, it was tough. When I'm photographing water, I'm a lot of times I'm photographing a specific thing for a pretty significant amount of time. Like I've photographed, a wave on a river for like an hour, and so that and like that process, like me looking through my viewfinder, like that is what I need out of it, right? Like that's why I photograph, is because of that time that I'm in the viewfinder. That's my goal when I'm photographing, is that time and getting that out of it. And if I get a photo from it, it's a gift, right? The photo's a gift. It's never the goal. So a lot of times when I'm having these, really personally significant moments looking through my viewfinder, photographing water, it's a very dynamic subject. It's moving a lot, and the other thing about it is like it presents itself in so many different ways, like depending on what's reflecting or if direct light's hitting it, the speed of the water, the kind of water, like the possibilities are near endless with water to interact with it, because it's very dynamic in that way. So it's easy to create vastly different styles of photograph of the same subject when it's water, just because it can react with so many different things in so many different ways. But I think the challenge for me was looking from a session with water. I just refer to them as sessions. I might have 200, 300 photos of the same thing, just in kind of like different compositions, or the water's creating its own composition in a different way. And my goal is to find the one or two that represent that whole entire that session, and that can be hard. I like 50 of them, and then you have to trim that down to 20, and then you have to trim the 20 down to 10.
That would be me.
Yeah. So, and I struggle from that. That's a huge part of, like, that's a huge roadblock for me, is choosing the right image. And I probably put way more thought and energy into it than I should or need to. And I can send 10 photos of the same thing off to Alex and be like, which one of these should I use? And he'll give me his thoughts, and I usually go the other way. No, he provides really valuable insight. And I think it's important to have somebody that, really understands your creative direction, and just you as a creative to kind of bounce those things off of. And Alex is that for me, and I think me for him. But anyway, so yeah, it was a long process, and there are some images in there that are from the same sessions, but I wanted to fully represent the experiences that I had. So coming up with 100 of them, it was tough. And it's interesting to me that you said that they do stand on their own, because I feel like a lot of them might not, and that they need the context of the others to kind of like to have their place. But that's what's awesome about is art and photography. It's like it's subjective, and my interpretation of things. I can have my interpretation and my intent as the artist, but really it's up to whoever's seeing it and what they see, and that can be vastly different things, and I find that interesting. A lot of people might not even think these are good photos at all or interesting at all, but that's part of the process, and that's why we're different people, and that's why we all photograph different things. So that's completely fine. But yeah, it was pretty tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. So when your book arrives in people's hands and they start looking through it, what do you hope that they take away from it?
That's a good question. So this is a monograph. There's not a lot of text in it. It's the piece by Bill, it's a piece by Alex, it's a piece by me, and it's a piece by Tula. But other than that, it is 100 photos of water. And my photography, it's for me. Like I think you can tell that, when I'm photographing, it is a purely, maybe selfish isn't the right word, but I'm doing it for me. It's something that I need to do. But I think, if you were to, like, you're asking me, like, what do I want people to get out of my work? It's maybe realizing that, there's so much more to, I'll talk about my work in general, but also the book. But like, there's so much more to water and just the world than we see, and it takes a kind of a specific mindset to be able to see it, and that's where my creative process comes from. So I think when people view my book, my hope is that the next time that they go out and they're around water, that they see it for more than what it is. They see it differently and have that enrich their life in that way. So maybe my work isn't like necessarily enriching their life and leaving an impact, but it's giving them a window to a way that they can kind of see the same thing for themselves when they go out. I had a lady who was featuring the Ebb and Flow collection on a website, and she sent me like an email and an aside afterwards, and she's like, I want you to know that ever since I've seen your water, and I've heard this from a couple people, but ever since I've seen your water work, like I look at water differently. And she talked about how she used to go to a river with her dog, and her dog has since passed, but she still goes back to the river, and now it's like the water that she looks like. And she's, she said, like, I can't claim to see what you see or get what you get out of it, but all I know is that, like, I look at it differently. And to me, like, that's the greatest compliment that I can have about my life, is that my work impacted somebody enough that it enables them to enrich their life and have meaningful experiences in places that maybe they didn't before, and I think that's something that's important to me, is that I'm able to see that beauty everywhere. And that's kind of what my work is about. My work is anonymous photos of, things that call out to me and that I engage with out of curiosity, and kind of just let myself listen to the landscape and have it show me what is special, and finding those moments of gratitude anywhere around me, even in a Costco parking lot. I was joking with my girlfriend about how I'm going to just do a Costco parking lot workshop, and we just go to Costco parking lots and find the beauty that we can find. Because when you reach that point in your photography or in your creative journey, at least for me, I can only speak for me, but when I realized that I don't need to be somewhere photographically appealing. I can literally find beauty in the middle of a city or a parking lot or a puddle or wherever have you. When you find the beauty to engage, find beauty like that to engage with, it kind of elevates those interactions a little bit, I guess.
You follow Mike Curry?
Yes,
he's
I know Mike.
Over in the UK.
Yep, a lot of his water work is done at Canary Wharf, so it's a lot of reflections of buildings and urban structures. But it's still he's an amazing. I remember when I first started realizing that I was getting into water work, I started seeing his stuff around, and Mike's a good guy, and he has wonderful work.
Yeah, it just came to mind because you're like, you don't have to be in the middle of a forest or a beautiful place to capture really interesting, meaningful work.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's and that's just that's a result of the things that I've been through in life and my need to find gratitude and moments of beauty, and like I said, that often overlooked beauty that is around us all the time. Just seeing the way that just looking out of my window and seeing the way that the way the light is hitting a specific leaf, and that leaf is fluttering and kind of flashing the light. That's I think that's when I think about why my work is important to me, it's because I feel like when I find those things, that those moments are made just for me. Every decision in my life led me to being there in that moment, and my experiences led me to being able to notice that specific thing. And that's a very personal thing, right? I'm not standing on the at Horseshoe Bend and seeing the river and this moment was made just for me, and having 3 million people behind me. I can see value in that for a lot of people, and it's obviously a very beautiful thing. But for me, I really need those personal moments, and knowing that just having that gratitude that I'm able to be there in that moment, experiencing that one thing, and being able to find gratitude and beauty in it.
So thinking about the book again, I'm curious, what do you think a tangible product like a photo book or a print can convey that a digital file or viewing a photo on someone's website or on Instagram, or put another way, how are these experiences different or alike?
I think a lot of it comes down to intent. When you're holding a book, there's obviously a reason that book exists, and I think it's hard for me to say, what people are going to get out of it. But, I know when I'm looking at a book, I don't have my attention isn't diluted, right? It's I'm looking at a book, I'm flipping pages there. I think that the tactile nature of something physical does have purposes that can't be explained. When we're scrolling on Instagram or just on a website, it's the viewing experience of looking at something on a screen or on an iPhone, it's diluted by all the other things that we look at on a screen And it's, diluted by the notifications going off the top of our screen, having to swipe up and break the attention. But when you're holding a book, you're able to like kind of immerse yourself in that and kind of like forget that everything exists and just really like touch and feel. And I think that tactile side is important, and I think we lose a lot of that with this increasingly digital age. I know it's something myself that I've been focused on. I bought a printer that I have no business buying, a 44-inch printer, because I wanted to get back into that tactile, side of making prints, and without the hurdle and the struggles of having to order it through a lab, knowing that I can like just rip a print off and hold it in my hands and see like what needs to be fixed, and then rip another one off, then another one, and like absolutely dial it in and be proud of like, the whole entire process from capture to physical print. And then even that, like, we've seen film photography kind of getting back into coming back into resurgence, and I'm doing the same thing. It has a completely different purpose in my creative process. It's only personal work, but just missing that really that romance and that tactile side of holding something physical, and just the photographic process and the chemistry, and knowing that like I have this latent image just kind of like trapped in this little box of all this light trapped in here, and it's just kind of like waiting for it to to come out. I don't know. There's a romance to the tactile and the physical side of things that I think we lose a lot of, and I think a lot of that comes through in a book. Yeah. And just knowing that it's like something that was really important to someone, and you can immerse yourself in what their process and their intent was, is pretty big.
Yeah, and the other thing is, as you were talking when I was thinking about books, is you also have you get to know like, okay, the photographer chose these images to go in this specific order, and theoretically that was intentional and has a purpose and a flow to it that you can't get with a website, or at least not as easily. Yeah. And then the other thing is, especially in regards to your book, which I really appreciated, was the spacing and the amount of written content and how relevant it is to the images and your journey as a photographer. I think it was like it's like the perfect amount of what to add to the book to give it a little bit more extra. Just it's extra, right? It gives me much more context as to what this body of work means, how it's been important to you, and what it's trying to convey for you. So I think that's the other thing that a book like yours can do that a website or digital stuff can't.
Yeah, and it's like it's also that it's expensive to do a book. This isn't something that you do lightly. It's not like holding somebody's book and knowing that like that the work that they put into that meant enough to them to take that vulnerable risk. Because it's not just making a book, and it's not just the financial capital required to produce a book. It's like there's a lot of vulnerability that goes in it. There's a roller coaster of emotions. Like you're excited, and then you question everything that you did, and then you're excited again, and then you're wondering what everybody's going to think and if it's going to sell. And so there's just a lot of vulnerability that goes into it, and knowing that somebody felt strongly enough about the work that they're putting into a book to expose themselves to all those different things that go into making it kind of elevates it, in my opinion, too.
So earlier in our conversation, really early on, you talked about using the camera as a tool to intimately explore the world, and I'm curious what that looks like for you in terms of practical application, as opposed to what we typically see as just taking photographs.
Right. So, kind of going back to one of the things I said before, it is the camera gives me this little box. It gives me this private viewing room where everything melts away, where it's just me in that moment in time existing. And, back when, in my early days of photography, it was about going out to get a photo of something. And, and that has value. But for me personally, it opened myself a lot up to, it just changed my interaction with nature. Instead of going out into nature and having photos happen, I was going out for photos, and then nature happened, right? So it was like, it changed I became a taker or, you know, like a visitor to the landscape. You know, I was going out to see what I can get from it. I was putting energy out.
Is a
like
transactional.
Yeah. That's a great word for it. Yeah, it's like, you know, you're going out to nature to get this. And it was like this really like kind of like word I'm looking for is, but it was. I always think of it as like putting energy out versus letting energy in. So like when I go out to a beach, when you're looking for a photo, you're like, oh, what rock am I going to put in my foreground? What's going to be my sun? You know, it's like this very like you're exporting all of this energy, all of this thought into the landscape, and it becomes about that photo, and you know, and you kind of. And I've talked about this a couple times, and other people talked about it too. And I think Guy Tall mentioned it in one of his books, but it's called the invisible gorilla, and you're probably familiar with it, the selective attention. So if you go to like YouTube and search like selective attention gorilla, you'll come up with a video, but it's a video of like 6 or 7 people in different colored t-shirts throwing basketballs around. And your instructions are to count how many times the basketball is being thrown by people in white t-shirts. So you're like, well, then you're counting, and it's like maybe 45 seconds long. Like, okay, how many times was it? Like 14. And then it's like, but did you see the gorilla? And then they rewind it, and halfway through the frame, like a guy walks through the middle of the frame, right through the group of people. They're throwing the basketball around him, and he's in a gorilla suit, and he stops, turns toward the camera, and beats his chest, and then walks back through. And it's because, like, you know, we have such a finite amount of attention that when we're looking for what we're looking for, we're going to miss all of the other things, right? So when I go out now, it's more about throwing away all of that. You know, we talk about results-driven mindset, and that's basically what it is. But when I just go because the whole reason that I go to nature is to go, right? And when I'm in that, then I'm able to like kind of like put myself in more of a receiving and an importing type of mentality where I'm letting things come to me. I'm able to like smell the air a little bit better. The air smells fresher. The light feels warmer. You know, I'm not concerned about getting a photo. I'm just concerned about being out in nature. But then when I do see something that tickles my curiosity, because I think, you know, that's the basis of our creativity is curiosity. When I see something, I'll engage with it through my camera. And it might not be a good photo. It might not be, you know, 90% of the time that I'm taking a photo of something, it's practice. It's to interact with something. You know, I think we get in this mindset where when we're using a camera, almost every shot we take is an attempt to get a photo that will make it into our portfolio that we can share on social media. And for me, it's the opposite. Like I go out and I'm using the camera to just engage with this thing that called to me, that elevated my soul, to get to know it. 99% of my photos suck. But in giving yourself like these opportunities to kind of like engage with something that calls to you, without the pressure of making a photo, and just being curious and exploring and experimenting and seeing what you can do with it, it opens up doors that you might not have known existed. Like if I didn't point my camera at that water on the beach back in 2011, and then continue to point my camera at water, you know, direct light on water and things like that, like, you know, I wouldn't be where I am as a photographer. Like this meaningful work wouldn't exist. But I allowed myself to take shitty photos because it was important to me. I enjoyed the process and like what I got out of it. So that is basically what photography has become to me. It's not this journey to get a photo. It's this journey to connect with the landscape in a more personal and intimate way. And having a camera and a viewfinder allows me to do that.
I love that. And I think I know the answer to this question based on what you just described, but you know, you, just like most of my other favorite photographers, have completely steered away from the more classical, you know, landscape photography style of making images with recognizable scenes of waterfalls and mountains and, you know, like very specific compositions. And you've gravitated more towards abstract and artistic renditions of nature. And I'm curious, why the switch?
Basically, you know, what I've been talking about, it all comes from wanting to interact with personal moments and being curious about things that call to me. You know, and I think, you know, I think that's a process, and there's nothing wrong with going and, to a specific place and taking a photograph of a specific thing. All I can speak of is, what I need and what I get out of photography. And for me, it is that need to find those personal moments and that beauty everywhere, and, and to interact with it. Like I said, like how 99% of the photos that I take, might not work, but that's not what I'm after. I'm not after the photo. I'm after the experience. And like I said, when I get a visually pleasing photo, it's a gift from that experience that I can use to represent it visually to people, and then, make my living off of it too. There's, that side of it too. But it's everything that I need, I get out of those personal interactions, and I value being able to go somewhere anonymous. And, I've talked about this before, but things call to us for whatever reasons, and who knows why they are, but that's why I want to point my camera at them, is so that I can kind of give it the attention that it deserves. I'm here in this moment, this thing is existing in this moment, the light is hitting it just so, I'm noticing it, I want to give it the attention it deserves, this moment in time. And you develop a relationship with it, and you're an enriched person. You've created a friend, you've created a memory. There are super anonymous trees in a lot of the places that I go, that they're just like every other tree, but for some reason, one specific time, they were calling out to me, or the light was hitting it, or the leaves were just a certain color, or something was going on to it that it called to me, so I engage with it. And now when I go back to that place, I look at that tree. That tree and I are friends. We have that relationship. And my life has been enriched. Did I get a photo out of it? No, but I'm a better person. I'm a more enriched person. I've created a memory. I've created some familiarity. And familiarity was huge with me in my photography. When I go to a place that I haven't been before, it's hard for me to feel like I'm making meaningful photography. I need that personal aspect of things. And I think, just going into the more abstract and the more intimate kind of things like that, it's isolating those moments into things that are special about a specific place to me at that moment in time. And what I get a kick out of is exploring it in every single way that I can, and using, like I said, I photograph midday light a lot, and that's hard to photograph. And so sometimes I have to be creative about how I use it, just so I can continue to interact with the things that call to me in a visually pleasing way. Is there still a goal that, when I'm interacting with this thing that might not make a pretty photo, is there still a goal of mine to make it aesthetically pleasing within the viewfinder? Yeah. And sometimes, I need to be creative with that. So it's just it's this act of just going out, engaging with things, and making them my own, and giving them the attention they deserve.
Yeah, and I want to put an exclamation point on something you just said, just so that people are... I didn't hear you trying to denigrate an approach where someone photographs a more traditional scene in a very traditional way. If that approach gives you what you need, just like these abstract images are giving you what you need, that's completely fine and fair. It's just it's just the point that for you, this is what you found has worked for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's a lot of judgment that goes around on social media about who's doing what and why they're doing it and stuff like that. And I don't concern myself. Like I said, there's enough negativity in the world. We don't need to pile on. If people are, if you want to be I want to go to the Japanese maple in Portland and take a photograph of a tree that everybody else has photographed, and it's going to look like, by all means, if that is enriching your life, if you're doing it and it's enriching somebody else's life, what's the problem with that? What's the problem? There's no problem with that. Somebody's going to find value in that, whether it's the photographer, even if the photographer has, business needs and they're not being authentic or genuine about it, somebody is going to see that photo. Somebody is going to be moved by it. And you know what? They might like it enough to buy a print and put it up in their house so they can look at it every day. It's going to enrich that person's life. So all I can talk about is what benefits me, and what other people do is none of my business. And all I know is me. So yeah, do what you want to do. And I think as long as you're being authentic and genuine and getting what you want out of it, then keep doing it. But if you reach a point where you feel like you're not getting that, then I think there's an opportunity to explore beyond the bounds that and the box that you are, because we're all in boxes, and once we kind of understand our box, and we want to continue to grow as people and creatives and photographers, and we need to start thinking differently. And that takes vulnerability, it takes experimentation, it takes exploration, it takes, curiosity, and it takes just kind of putting yourself out there and taking terrible photos. I highly encourage you to take terrible photos.
Yeah.
As long as it's something that you're curious about.
I was going to say failure.
Yeah. Take terrible photos.
Yeah.
They're needed.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I do, so I'm good there. All right, TJ, who do you recommend for the podcast? Who are some people that our listeners need to know more about?
I think you should try, and I apologize if I butcher anybody's name here, but Jaume Llorens, he's from Catalonia. He does some really interesting diptychs and highly contrasted black and white stuff, very evocative stuff. Some of my favorite stuff that I've been seeing recently. Jo Stephen is always, she's wonderful. Nell Talon is wonderful. Mike DiMiola out of Vermont. He's been photographing for a short amount of time, but it doesn't seem like it. Had a good time with him up in a really special place. Cesar Yandesa would be a good guy, and Michelle Sans, I think you should look into talking to them. I'd like to hear what they have to say.
I love it. All right, TJ. Well, this has been fun, and I'm looking forward to getting your book in my hands. I've got the pre-order myself, so I'm excited to hold it and to sit down with it and to immerse myself in it.
I appreciate your support, buddy. It's been meaningful. You can anybody listening, if you did want to get the book, you can go to ebbandflowmonograph.com. That takes you to the sales page, and any support is greatly appreciated. And I've known you for a while, and you've always been a really supportive guy. So good to know you're still doing it.
No problem. Well, thank you to TJ for joining me on the podcast this week and for being so vulnerable for that conversation. I'm rooting for you, my friend. Please join me in supporting TJ by purchasing his book. You can find a link in the show notes. TJ is also offering bonus prints of images that are displayed in the book at a discounted price. So if you're a nerdy collector like me, I would highly encourage you to get in on that. If you enjoyed our conversation, you can also listen to a bonus recording on Patreon where TJ and I talk about how the business side of photography has impacted his mental health. Just go to patreon.com/fstop and listen to join. Lastly, early on in the conversation, you heard TJ talk about the website where he gained more confidence and found community early on in his nature photography career. Such a site still exists. It is called Nature Photographers Network. You can join me and many other amazing photographers over there for honest and thoughtful critique of your work. Join me by going to npn.link/fstop. Make sure to use the code FSTOP10 for a 10% discount. Other than the amazing critique forums over there, you can join NPN to gain access to countless discounts on tutorials, books, software, prints, and lots more. I look forward to seeing you there. Again, that's npn.link/fstop. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.